Prince Andrew, smearing Virginia Giuffre. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Smearing is a common narcissistic manipulation. It essentially occurs in relation to two instances. The first is an ongoing smearing, almost in a drip feed way, and the second is as a consequence of a specifically problematic action by the victim that the narcissist needs to stop. Dealing with the first, what often happens is that when you're in the relationship with the narcissist, it might be a romantic one, it might be a familial one, you might be friends with the narcissist, working with the narcissist, you will invariably threaten the narcissist's need for control. The narcissist may not be able to assert control over you directly, but they still need to get that control. So what happens is that their narcissism causes them to essentially complain about you, moan about you, put you down, denigrate you, insult you in some way to a third party. Take, for example, this. A narcissist calls his wife. She doesn't answer the phone. That wounds him. She's not under control. He calls her again. She doesn't answer. He's wounded again. He does not have her under control. At this point, his narcissism decides it is pointless trying to assert control over her directly. It's not working, and this is wounding our narcissist. The narcissism is a self-defense mechanism. Its job is to protect the narcissist through the pursuit of the prime aims and to avoid and diminish the impact of wounding. Accordingly, it decides that continuing to compel this narcissist to keep ringing his wife is not conducive to the narcissist's best interests because he'll continue to be wounded. So what does it cause him to do? He turns to his colleague who shares an office or might be walking past and say, "Poof, I've just been trying to call my wife. She won't answer. She's probably spending all my money on shoes." Poof. He moans about her, in effect. The colleague nods in agreement and says, "Sure, that's women for you." And his response not only shows he's under control, but his agreement that his colleague's wife isn't a particularly nice person gives the narcissist that subconscious sense of control that's sought. He smeared her. He now has control. He moves on to the next thing. What can then happen is that as a consequence of the fact that you repeatedly threaten the narcissist's need for control and they're not able to always get control over you directly, the narcissist goes away and keeps smearing you to third parties, which is why when the balloon goes up at the end of the relationship and perhaps you then approach those people to say, "Billy's been abusing me," you're met with cynicism because unbeknownst to you, Billy, as a consequence of this need for control, has spent the last year intermittently complaining about you and in so doing painting you as the problem, so that when you seek to expose him, it's too late. He, as a collateral consequence of the need for control, has smeared you. He didn't decide, "I'm now going to spend the next year smearing my partner so that when I eventually get rid of her, nobody will believe that she's being abused." No. It is a collateral consequence of the intermittent need for control that he had, that he kept complaining about his wife or partner to his family, to his friends, so that eventually, when disengagement occurred, and she goes to complain about him to everybody else, she's been painted as the problem. So that's the first instance where smearing occurs. The second is as a consequence of where the victim does something which is particularly problematic to the narcissist, that they actively want to shut them up in relation to that particular act. Unsurprisingly, we find that Prince Andrew was involved in smearing Virginia Giuffre. As reported in the Telegraph by Victoria Ward, Prince Andrew tried to smear his teenage sex abuse accuser by passing her confidential information to police, it has been claimed. First of all, that exhibits a sense of entitlement and a lack of boundary recognition by passing her confidential information to the police. It shows a lack of emotional empathy for her in undertaking such an act. It shows the necessity of seeking control through this act. It's demonstrative of his deluded belief that he is entitled to do as he pleases. The prince asked his taxpayer-funded police bodyguard to investigate Virginia Giuffre and passed him her date of birth and social security number, a leaked email revealed. He then told Buckingham Palace aide Ed Perkins, who at the time was Elizabeth II's deputy press secretary, that he had asked one of his personal protection officers to dig up information about Miss Giuffre, also demonstrating what a clown he is by admitting to such behaviour to a third party. A more evolved narcissist would have got somebody else to do the dirty work and would have ensured that it wasn't traceable back to them. The revelations, published by the Mail on Sunday, came just 24 hours after the King moved against Prince Andrew, amid fears that a newly unearthed email sent to Jeffrey Epstein would open the floodgates to more scandal. The email, which emerged last week, exposed a fundamental fault line in Andrew's defence and proved a tipping point for the King. The Prince is said to have emailed Mr. Perkins hours before an infamous photograph was published in February 2011 that showed him with his arm around Miss Giuffre's waist. "It would seem she has a criminal record in the States," he wrote, according to reports. "I've given her date of birth and social security number for investigation with XXX, the on-duty personal protection officer." Miss Giuffre's family said the email exposes the lengths to which those implicated tried to discredit and defame survivors. Meanwhile, legal experts warned there could be serious implications for Prince Andrew, who faced renewed calls for a police investigation. Last night, Andrew Lowney, the Prince's biographer, warned there was more scandal to come. "This is just the tip of the iceberg," he said. "I think the palace is worried about new allegations that will emerge stateside. They know there is more damaging stuff to come." He said the King should have removed his brother's titles entirely, rather than simply ordering him not to use them. Mr. Lowney said the Prince should be forced to cooperate with the authorities to finally expose the full extent of his dealings with Epstein. He also claimed the King should have made the announcement himself, demonstrating that he had taken the lead rather than allowing the Prince to suggest he had made the decision himself for the good of the country. Unsurprisingly, we have a situation whereby a narcissist deems an individual to be a threat, and as a consequence of that, he moves against her. He seeks to obtain information to smear her in relation to the fact that she has a criminal record, to look to discredit her. That her presence and the presence of that photograph, which he was aware of, were naturally a subconscious threat to his need for control. The consequence is that his narcissism leads him to take action to try and nullify that specific threat by digging up information to discredit her. So it's not a case of the first instance of smearing where he just happens to complain about Virginia Giuffre to somebody else who agrees with him. In this instance, it's the second type of smearing, whereby the presence of the photograph is a specific threat to control. She herself is a threat to control, and he needs to discredit her. And therefore his narcissism leads him to pass confidential information, which is a lack of boundary recognition and a lack of accountability, to seek to obtain information through his sense of entitlement, to discredit her, exhibiting a lack of emotional empathy, so that he can basically nullify the threat to control that she poses. An instinctive response by him to a threat to control, driven by his narcissism, and the second type of smearing that the narcissist engages in, driven, of course, by the protection mechanism that is his narcissism. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.